WNUR, The Scope Radio, with your hosts, Stroh, DJ Deluge, and Wes Restless. 89.3 FM, Chicago. Tuesday nights from 10 to midnight. Streaming live at WNUR.org. Playing the finest in hip-hop and beyond.
.3 FM, Scope Radio here every Tuesday night, and got a special caller, and why don't you say who's there if you can hear us?
Hey, this is DJ Shadow.
All right, cool. We're glad it worked out here, because I know you're overseas, right?
Yeah, I'm in Tokyo.
Nice. So it's what, about lunchtime out there?
Yeah, although, yeah, it's 12:30.
Right. Well, thanks for calling. I know you're a busy guy in a foreign country, so I'm sure you got a lot going on out there.
Cool.
Are you there for a show?
Yeah, I have a show tomorrow and one on Saturday.
Okay, cool. Well, we've been listening to the album here and playing it, of course, on the show, and we have a lot of good things to say about it. The one thing that sticks out to me is that it's a lot of different sounds on there. I know Greg Kot from here in Chicago, the Chicago Tribune, kind of described it as a mixtape of all kind of the genres that you're known for. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a fair thing to say about this new album?
I don't know. I'm always confused a little bit when people talk about, how diverse things are, or if there's too many different sounds, or because as a DJ, I think all DJs reserve the right to kind of play whatever they want and not limit themselves to any one genre. I think sometimes when you come from hip-hop, people have their own preset perception of what hip-hop is allowed to be or what it is in their mind. So when you stray into, like heavy metal or punk or folk or things that they identify with, they start going, well, wait a minute, how can this be? There must be something, something not right about this.
Right.
But, on Introducing, I sampled Metallica. I feel like I've always made records that were pretty diverse. And so it's, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure how else to respond to that other than why would I choose to cut off influences or close my ears to things that might be educational for me.
Yeah, it kind of seems like it depends who's listening, which tracks they're going to like. I mean, the hip-hop people are going to be, down on some of the more, rock-influenced tracks and vice versa. Mm-hmm. So I think that's always been a part of your album releases. But this one is called The Less You Know, The Better. And really intriguing album title. And I've read a couple things about where that comes from, but if you can say it in your own words, where the album title, how you came up with it.
It's just something that I wrote in the front of my studio log one day, kind of near the beginning of the process. I don't really remember why I wrote it, what made me write it, but it was something that I must have felt pretty strongly about because I wrote it in, really big black letters.
Right.
And over the course of working on the record, I came up with other album title names, but in the end, that was the one that was, jumping out at me because I like titles that not only can kind of refer to the music that's inside, but also have a broader context outside the music as well.
And something I found, through your album artwork and even your website is this constant theme, I think, of technology, if I can call it that. And I'm wondering if the album title relates anything to your views on technology.
Well, having grown up definitely I mean, I grew up in Silicon Valley, always have lived in Silicon Valley, and so you're constantly subjected to this message that your life is inadequate without this latest device or app or and it's really kind of the capitalist machine in overdrive. You know what I mean? It's the classic message that whether you know it or not, you're unfulfilled right now, and all you need is to go out and spend your money on this. And I find it an interesting message to be receiving on a constant basis, and I found myself kind of evaluating that over the course of making the record, because I really wanted to free myself from distraction when making this album, and that's hard to do. You know what I mean? I think we're all, we all check our phones every 10 minutes. We all check our email every half an hour at least. So it was an interesting experiment to try and get away from all that.
Yeah, and just keeping with the technology thing, I mean, I know you've had to adapt since introducing as far as the equipment you use. So I'm just wondering, like, I know on introducing and on your early stuff, a lot of, blood, sweat, and tears went into making those songs. You can hear some pops here and there, and the technology you use, I assume, has changed since those days. So I guess my question is, how difficult is it to transition with the technology and still keep your, your soul and your sound and your interest in the music?
Well, for me, I mean, there's a couple different ways I could answer that, but I guess the first way is, I mean, essentially the process hasn't changed. I mean, it all starts and ends with me as a DJ first, and a stack of records, excuse me, 2 turntables, a mixer, and just going through the music, playing records, listening to things that are interesting, listening to a lot of stuff that's not interesting, and trying to filter interesting components into a stew. And then after that distillation, then it really just comes to, okay, now what instrument that's currently out there will involve the least amount of manual reading and headaches and trying to figure out why this isn't working or why that's working. I mean, the MPC was my tool of choice for a long time, but then it simply became obsolete.
Right.
And instead of, taking 3 times as long to do something on that, as soon as it became clear that there were other quicker ways, then it was kind of a no-brainer. It's like, well, I'm not here to, perpetually be on an MPC just because that's what people think that I use. I mean, I'm trying to make music in a manner that allows me to have the shortest possible span of time between idea and realization of that idea. And that's obviously not to say that I'm trying to rush through things or not take my time to construct something interesting. I mean, obviously I hope I am, but yeah, that's the only reason why anything would ever change for me is, well, if there's a quicker way or a way that involves less headache or a way that will allow me to focus more on the arrangement and the ideas rather than the physical execution, then I'm all for it.
It's like the old saying, I don't want a drill, I want a hole.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and one big thing, one obvious thing that's changed technology-wise has been your stage show. I know Wes had a question about that.
Well, just checking things out, and I know you were in town last summer for Pitchfork, and heard a lot of folks really raving about the performance and really talking about this Shadowsphere, which you've been implementing into your shows lately. I wonder if you could tell folks a little bit about that and how you the idea came up for that.
Sure. Well, I mean, back in '99, I first started doing festivals out in Europe, and this was during a time when there weren't really any festivals in the States that DJs could do. Although I think I did Coachella that year. It was like its second year. But, at that time it was novelty enough to have a DJ on a stage as opposed to in the dance tent. That I think I was able to get away with just two turntables and a mixer and a short half-hour performance. But I realized even then that there has to be something else going on for me or any DJ to be able to elevate their game and to be able to compete with rock bands and all the other entertainment that's happening around you. So I started using visuals on the next tour, and then in 2006 really bumped it up. We had 9 screens, and I was on this one-story high platform, and it was, as technologically advanced as we felt we could get at that point. And then it really became about, for this tour, sitting down with my visual collaborator and talking about where we had come and what we had done, and really drilling down into the themes that we wanted to explore. And we tossed around phrases like, sleight of hand and breaking the flat screen. We didn't want to be projecting on a flat surface anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And also we really liked the idea of projecting on dual planes, so having one set of visuals for the sphere itself and then a separate set of visuals for the back screen behind it. And so then what you're doing is really getting into some interesting optical illusions, and it really opened up thematically what we could say visually in reference to the music. So you referenced Pitchfork, and obviously we had always had concerns that it was going to be too bright, and of course it was. So it was kind of funny. I mean, I just decided, well, people can't see the visuals, so I'm just going to open the sphere. And I really didn't know how the show would come across, but I'm glad it seems to have made an impression. I mean, I was obviously concerned about that, but I mean, ideally you want people seeing the whole show, and that's why normally I go on after darkness, or I'm in a club where it's dark, or a theater where it's dark, so that people can really see the whole impact.
Right, and people can actually view clips, right, on your website of the Shadowsphere?
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of fan clips and my own clips on YouTube all over the place. But it is difficult to really, I think, in some ways you get a sort of a sense of what's happening, but in other ways it really, I mean, obviously when you see it in person, it's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
But I know even looking on your website, djshadow.com, there is a sort of a world tour footage video up, which is super interesting because it just sort of lets people know the amount of different people and energy that it takes to put such a compelling live show together. And besides for the video, you have your new album, The Less You Know the Better, for sale up on djshadow.com, and there's a lot of different options for a fan that wants to pick up your album. There's flash drives, there's T-shirts, there's like a whole bunch of different bundles.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder what was kind of the thinking behind putting that sort of those different packages together for the people.
Well, I mean, sometimes a band will do like a box set version that's behind the glass at a record store or whatever, and some kind of obviously there'll always be the normal version, but then some people want something a little bit different, a little more interesting, and so we really just tried to come up with something that would be different, that we hadn't done before. I mean, I've done everything from picture discs to 3 10-inches to CDs with like drink coasters and stuff like that comes with it. So I mean, we've done a lot of special products through the years on my site, and this is just the USB version was something different. And there's different. If you only want to spend this much, then you get this. If you only want to spend that much, then you get this. I mean, the last thing I want to do is make people feel like they have to spend X amount. I mean, there's all different price options or whatever. So
yeah, it seems
that's
like you thought of everything.
For the fans that want something different. If you just want to download, obviously that's available. But some people like the physical product, and they want things that nobody else is going to have, and so we like to make that available to people.
What up, Shadow? This is DJ Deluge. I got a question for you about kind of about how you got started, a little bit about KDVS and how you kind of parlayed that into the career that is what it is now.
Cool, man. Well, I mean, back in the day, I used to just, I mean, we're going back to 83, 84. I just used to spin the the radio dial up and down looking for any sign of hip-hop anywhere. And one day I stopped, I was amazed to hear The Roof is on Fire by Rockmaster Scott and the Dynamic Three. And I kept listening, but then the next record they played was like a dub reggae record, and the next record after that was like a hardcore punk song, and I was unfamiliar with like the free-form college radio format. But I quickly realized that occasionally this KDVS college station was playing, hip-hop once in a while, because at that time it was only embraced by people that realized it was something different. It was not embraced for the most part by, what was then known as urban radio or, because it was something that was totally different, and it was a youth movement, and most of the people entrenched in radio didn't want to know anything about it. So naturally, as I started doing my own mixes and stuff, I kept listening to KDVS occasionally, and when I was in junior high school, a guy named Oris Washington came on, and he was the first person to have an all hip-hop show, although he did occasionally sprinkle in a lot of Prince and The Time and groups like that, which actually I found really frustrating. But then, so one day I called him up and was just like, hey, I'm a kid in town and I do mixes. Would you ever want to check it out? Can I, ride my bicycle over there and drop it off? And so I did that one day. I think it was maybe 86 or 87, probably 87, and met him, and he was kind of bugging off of the fact that I knew a lot about these obscure rap records. So I think, he became a mentor, and we eventually, we went to see, Def Jam 88 at the Oakland Coliseum and got into all kinds of, basically he was the first person to introduce me to the industry, and to be kind of an insider and know and be able to meet people like all the dudes in that were making the music that I love. So that was kind of how I got started.
That's definitely cool. I find that similar to how I got started back in the late '90s with this radio station. But I want to fast forward a little bit to the future. I know you're short on time and you probably are calling long distance here, but I just want to talk about the single with Kweli and Posness. It's called Posnus.
From De La.
Right. I've never been able to pronounce the name correctly. But it's called Stay the Course. And just talk a little bit about that as far as the new album. What's the feel of the album and this track?
Okay, well, this is just something that I've been working on this beat, and in a lot of ways it was just kind of a really simple, it wasn't trying to be real 2011 with it, wasn't trying to be super crossover, heavy, hard-hitting. I just wanted to do like a beat that kind of reminded me of, it's funny because I would have never made a beat like this like 6, 7, 8 years ago because, the underground hip-hop scene in California had sort of burned itself out, and it seemed like everybody felt like the way forward was to try and make beats that sounded like radio hip-hop because it was getting to the point where, and it is kind of at a point where if you're not crossing over, it's really difficult to make ends meet and keep things moving. So in a weird kind of way, I actually felt like this, I always like to try and offer an alternative. I'm never trying to sound like anybody else. I'm never trying to imitate anybody else because that's already out there, and I feel like my role is to offer an alternative. So when I was working on this beat, I was like, wow, this beat in a way is kind of a throwback, but I'm actually kind of cool with it because there really isn't anything else being made like it right now. So I just reached out to Pos, and I had toured with De La back in the 90s, and there was some history there, so it wasn't like I was just calling him out of the blue. And
Right.
and we talked about themes that you never hear in hip hop anymore, and one of them was maintain. You know, that classic kind of mid '90s New York. You know, where I always thought it was really inspiring to hear about other people's struggles and how you can overcome them, and you know, that's a message that I feel like you really don't hear in hip hop at all these days. So so we talked about that, and then Kweli is obviously another massive inspiration to me lyrically, and I just thought it was a real cool pairing, and it really isn't trying to be anything too I don't think it ever will be a single or anything. It's just kind of like, this is a moment on the record that reflects a little bit about where I come from, and again, it's an alternative, hopefully.
Sure. Very cool.
Yeah, and I know we only got a couple more minutes here with you. I know time is tight here, but I did want to ask you about the tour, because I know you're in the midst of one right now. Can people expect the Shadowsphere overseas, or is that something you do stateside?
We've done it everywhere, but I just finished 8 dates in Asia where we didn't have it because it was basically impossible to do it in terms of shipping and freight, and we would have actually lost money on every show. So, but it is here in Japan. We basically slow boated it from the UK to Japan, and I did these other dates while it was in transit.
Wow.
So, yeah. So, I mean, there's actually 2 spheres, believe it or not. We built one, and then we built Shadowsphere 2, so that it can be in transit to wherever we're going next, while the other one is with me. So,
wow.
There's a whole science behind it that's way too complicated for me to get my head around. But,
nice.
I think I've finished the last show in China that won't have it, and to be honest, anyway, we were playing a lot of places that it wouldn't have fit anyway. You know, like when you're playing places like Indonesia and Thailand, you're there's a limited amount of people that are going to come out for someone like me. So it was cool to do without it. And honestly, there's been a couple times where one time in Germany it didn't make the plane because the government needed the cargo space for something else, and then one time in Atlanta it wouldn't fit in the venue. But it's funny because when I've done it without the sphere, I do get kind of a lot of interesting feedback where people are like, well, no, actually, I like being able to, you were really up close and I could see you the whole time, and it was cool. So I think it works, honestly, with or without. But I like having it because I like people being able to see, what I think is the whole show. It's sort of like it's an alternative kind of experience if it's not there, but I like it there.
Right.
That's great, and once again, we really appreciate you taking the time out to call us up and
of course,
talk to us.
Definitely, man.
I appreciate it too.
Before you get going, I was just curious. Maybe you could let the people out there listening know maybe just one thing that they might not know about you as an artist or just a person. Some kind of interesting thing that people may not know about you.
What would I say to that? I mean, aside from the fact that music is basically 98% of everything that I'm interested in, I'm a passive sports fan. I mean, it's interesting. I grew up playing sports, and then when I got into DJing as a living and moving around the globe and stuff, I kind of fell out from even caring about sports for like 15 years, and then starting about, I guess, 6 or 7 years ago, I kind of got back into it, and I went to the Game 4 of the World Series last year. Obviously, SF won it all last year. So, I mean, that's something that, like, it literally kind of bookends my day. Like, I'll wake up, check the scores, and then go to sleep checking the scores. It's something that, I don't know, it's possibly because it's something from my youth and it's comforting or something, or I don't know what it is, but I've gotten more into sports in the last 6 years than I had been for a long time. So I'm not sure how interesting that is to people, but that's something
that's cool.
I never really talk about or really and I don't like to like tweet about stuff like that because inevitably, I mean, you're gonna alienate more people than you're gonna include.
Sure.
That's true.
And so we play mostly we play a lot of Chicago acts. You know, basically we're a Chicago station here. Are there any Chicago acts that you're checking for these days?
That I'm checking for these days, man. Well, when you're working on a record for 2 years and then you're on tour for a year, it makes it kind of hard to really be out there, and obviously it's so hard to just spend time in a record store just brushing up on people. But one of my favorite entities in Chicago is, of course, Numero Group, which is the reissue label that I sometimes lend my energies to, and they've reissued a bunch of soul and funk stuff from Chicago, everything from Bosco to I guess the most recognizable name would be the Syl Johnson box set that they did. So if you've got it laying around, you should play something from that, because when it comes to Chicago music, Syl Johnson is about as important as you can get next to someone like Curtis Mayfield.
Nice. And we actually just played, I want to mention to you, we played the MISO song, Crush and the Roots. Real fresh check from, what was that, 97?
Let me think. I think that predated Introducing, but I could be wrong. I think it might have been 95, actually.
Yeah. Pretty rare track on...
Way ahead of its time.
Yeah. But
cool.
It's a favorite here on Scope Radio, and we appreciate you taking the time out here for
Yeah, man, definitely.
for the show here.
No, thank you, fellas, and yeah, sorry if I was a little slow when we started off. I haven't had any food yet today.
Gotcha. We'll let you go.
Rolling.
That's all good. Hey, next time you get in the States, man, we'd love to have you on again, talk about what's going on and all that, and, build with you more.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
Cool.
Thanks
Thanks
DJ
again.
Shadow. Have a great one. Be
All
safe
right,
out there.
Take care.
Peace.
Yeah. 89.3 FM.
Now, who's going to bring you
One
that,
and
man?
only.
Who's going to bring you that?
DJ Shadow.
DJ Shadow
Nobody.
on the line, live from Tokyo, right here to
This-
Chicago.
Live from Tokyo, son.
Pretty crisp line for, overseas. That's cool. Glad
Well,
it,
they
Yeah,
got
that was
technology
like
locked down
clear.
over there.
right. But just to reiterate,
Midwest.
real fresh album. We're going to play a new cut off of there. Actually, Stay the Course, which Deluge mentioned with De La Soul. Actually, I think it's only like one of a few songs on the new album that actually has MCs or vocals on it.
It's about probably par for the course for him. I would
Yeah,
imagine.
that's I'd say about average for him.
But yeah, all you DJ Shadow fans, go check out djshadow.com and pick up the new album. The less you know, the better. There's all types of different options for getting the album. We're going to get into a new cut with, Pasta News from De La Soul and Talib Kweli, which I'm definitely feeling the joint. There's a lot of cool stuff going on sonically. Some harmonica, some birds chirping and stuff, and it's a real cool joint. And as always, the drums are slamming, as DJ Shadow drums always end up doing. So
It's a dope track.
you ready to rock it, Tim?
Yeah, we're going to do this,
Do
and
it.
then we're going to do another song actually called I Gotta Rock right after it. So we're going to do back-to-back new Shadow cuts. But any questions or comments, give us a call here at the station. Number 847-866 WNUR. Be here till midnight. Scope Radio 89.3 FM.
Yeah.
The Scope Radio.